Imagine you've built the world's biggest airplane. It's not just a jet, it's a floating palace with showers, cocktail bars, and more seats than a football stadium. The A380 was meant to be the king of the skies, the heavyweight champion of aviation. But here's the twist. While Airbus poured billions into making it a reality, most airlines looked at the superjumbo and said, "Yeah, no thanks." All except one. Emirates. Emirates looked at this massive double-decker and thought, yes, this is the jet that will carry Dubai into the center of the aviation world. And for a while, it worked. Emirates turned the A380 into a legend. Passengers booked flights just to say they'd flown it. But then reality came knocking. Fuel costs, empty seats, and a changing airline industry turned the A380 from a superstar into an expensive diva. And that's where the drama begins. Emirates wanted Airbus to build them a brand new, upgraded version, the A380neo, and Airbus? Let's just say they weren't interested in a second date. This is the story of Emirates versus Airbus, a story of romance, heartbreak, billions of dollars, and one very big airplane. The A380's story starts long before Emirates tried to save it. When Airbus first dreamed up this beast, they imagined airports overflowing with passengers in need of mega-capacity planes. The A380 would be the ultimate hub-and-spoke jet giant, cities feeding into giant airports. London, New York, Dubai, Singapore, all connected by a sky palace. For many airlines, though, it felt like buying a cruise ship when everyone else was moving to fast ferries. Airlines like American, Delta, and United weren't impressed. They wanted flexibility. They wanted twin-engine jets they could fill easily on more routes. And so, while the A380 looked incredible on paper, the order books looked thin. Then along came Emirates. Emirates didn't just buy a few A380s, they bought an army of them. By the time the dust settled, Emirates would account for more than half of all A380 deliveries. For Emirates, the A380 was more than a plane, it was a symbol, a flying billboard that shouted, "Dubai is here, and we are the center of your travel universe." And honestly, it worked. People booked Emirates flights not just for the destination, but for the experience. Showering at 40,000 feet? Check. Hanging out at the onboard bar? Check. Taking Instagram selfies in a seat that looked like a mini apartment? Double check. The A380 wasn't just transportation, it was aviation theater. But even as Emirates doubled down, Airbus was quietly sweating. The numbers weren't adding up. Production costs had spiraled into the stratosphere, $25 billion, to get the plane to market. And while Emirates kept the line running, the rest of the aviation world was saying, thanks, but no thanks. For Emirates, though, this was still their golden goose. The A380 fit perfectly into their hub-and-spoke model. Dubai was the crossroads of the world, and the A380 let them funnel tens of thousands of passengers through their home base daily. It was the airline equivalent of owning the biggest billboard in Times Square. Passengers loved it. Crews loved it. Dubai loved it. But behind the love story, cracks were starting to show. Because even the most beautiful relationship can have expensive baggage. On the surface, the A380 was a flying masterpiece. Passengers adored it. Aviation geeks worshipped it. Airports loved the prestige of having one on the tarmac. But under all that glitter was a brutal truth. The A380 was financially terrifying. Airbus had poured roughly $25 billion into its development, expecting to sell hundreds, maybe even 1,000, over its lifetime. The logic was simple. More people flying meant bigger planes were needed. But the aviation market had already shifted by the time the A380 entered service in 2007. Passengers wanted more point-to-point travel, not massive hub connections. Think of it this way. The A380 was like buying a tour bus when all your friends decided to just Uber instead. Airlines realized it was easier, cheaper, and more flexible to run smaller, fuel-efficient twin-engine jets like the Boeing 787, Dreamliner, or the Airbus A350. Instead of cramming 500 people on one giant flight, they could run 2 or 3 smaller flights with less risk of half-empty cabins. For the A380, this spelled trouble. Fuel consumption was another nightmare. 4 massive engines meant guzzling kerosene at astonishing rates. And while passengers loved the quiet, smooth ride, airline accountants were staring at the fuel bills in horror. Even when oil prices dipped, the economics of the A380 just didn't stack up. Airports, too, weren't thrilled. To handle the A3, many hubs had to expand gates, reinforce taxiways, and redesign jet bridges. That meant extra infrastructure costs. Millions poured into concrete just to make room for the big bird. Only a few mega airports could justify the expense. Smaller airports shrugged and said, "We'll pass." And then there was the elephant in the room, rather the giant on the tarmac: sales. The A380 never caught on beyond a handful of carriers. Emirates bought them in bulk. Singapore Airlines put some into service. Qantas and British Airways picked up a few. But beyond that, crickets. U.S. carriers avoided it entirely. Low-cost airlines laughed it out of the room. By the mid-2010s, the A380's future looked shaky. Airbus executives were biting their nails. Was this mega project going to become aviation's most expensive mistake? Enter Emirates. Emirates wasn't just a customer, it was the A380's lifeline. Without their massive orders, Airbus would have had to shut down the program years earlier. Emirates kept the production line alive, buying dozens more jets and hinting at future deals. For them, the A380 still worked. Their Dubai hub thrived on funneling enormous numbers of passengers through a single location. The A380 was their crown jewel. But even Emirates couldn't ignore the winds of change. The airline industry was marching toward efficiency, not extravagance. And that's when Emirates came up with a bold idea. If the A380 was struggling to survive, why not reinvent it? Why not give it new life, new engines, and a new reason to exist? Thus, the legend of the A380neo was born. If the A380 was starting to look like an expensive diva, Emirates wasn't ready to break up. No way. In fact, instead of backing off, they doubled down. They wanted Airbus to give the plane a makeover, a new lease on life. Enter the legend of the A380neo. Now, neo in Airbus language means new engine option. Think of it as a turbocharged blow-up. The idea was simple. Swap out the A380's thirsty engines with brand new, fuel-sipping models, tweak the aerodynamics a little, maybe shave a few tons off the structure, and boom, suddenly you've got a jumbo that doesn't guzzle kerosene like a frat boy at happy hour. At the center of this dream was Sir Tim Clark, Emirates president, a man famous in aviation circles for mixing sharp business instincts with grand, almost romantic visions of what aviation could be. For him, the A380 wasn't just another aircraft. It was the backbone of Emirates' identity. Without it, Dubai's role as the ultimate hub in the sky might crumble. So when Airbus started showing cold feet, Clark decided to play visionary. Picture him walking into Airbus boardrooms with a kind of salesman swagger. Listen, he might as well have said, "All this jet needs is a reboot. You give me engines that cut fuel burn by 12, maybe 14%, and I'll order enough of them to keep your factories humming for a decade." And he wasn't bluffing. Emirates hinted at ordering dozens more, at least 100 new aircraft if Airbus pulled the trigger on a neo. That kind of commitment was unprecedented. In the world of aviation, one airline promising to buy that many giant planes was like one person buying out an entire car dealership. The technical side of the proposal was juicy too. Rolls-Royce and Engine Alliance were both eyed as potential suppliers for the new generation of engines. And whispers about Rolls-Royce's Ultrafan technology gave the idea even more sparkle: engines that could slash fuel burn by up to 25%. Combine that with a few aerodynamic tweaks, like reprofiled wings or lighter composite materials, and suddenly the A380 could transform from fuel hog to fuel hero. In theory, at least. For Emirates, the A380neo wasn't just about economics, it was about brand power. This was the aircraft that gave them global dominance. With a neo, they could extend that dominance another 20 or 30 years. Passengers would keep flocking to the novelty of the flying palace, while rival airlines stuck to their more boring twin jets. It was like showing up to the Oscars in a limo while everyone else arrived in Ubers. But let's be honest, not everyone was sipping Emirates champagne. Industry analysts rolled their eyes. To them, the A380neo looked less like a smart move and more like throwing money into a very stylish black hole. Why? Because outside Emirates, demand was dead. Airlines like Air France were already retiring A380s early. Lufthansa was parking theirs in storage. Singapore Airlines was phasing them out. Even carriers that had once embraced the double-decker were quietly admitting it didn't fit the modern strategy anymore. Yet Emirates persisted. Tim Clark campaigned for the Neo like it was his personal crusade. He kept showing up at air shows, interviews, and press briefings, dropping hints that the Neo was the future. The message was clear. If Airbus builds it, we'll buy it. For a while, it seemed Airbus might actually consider it. Executives listened. Engineers did some studies. They ran the numbers, explored the engine options, even flirted with the design. But as the years ticked on, the enthusiasm inside Airbus headquarters fizzled. And here's where the irony kicks in. The A380 was already a niche product. Developing a Neo would cost billions more. To make that investment back, Airbus would need to sell at least a few hundred. And with only Emirates truly interested, the math looked worse than the in-flight Wi-Fi speed on a stormy day. But from Emirates' perspective, this wasn't just business math. It was survival math. Without a steady pipeline of A380s, their hub-and-spoke empire risked losing its glamour. They didn't just want the Neo, they needed it. The stage was set for a showdown. One side had passion, vision, and a willingness to write very, very big checks. The other side had spreadsheets, skepticism, and a growing suspicion that the superjumbo era was over. And so the A380neo went from dream to drama. Emirates dressed up the A380neo dream in glitter, promised long walks on the beach, and even hinted at dropping billions of dollars. But Airbus? They were that cold, calculating X who looks you dead in the eye and says, "This isn't working." The breaking point came around the 2017-2018 Dubai Airshow. Emirates showed up ready to make it rain. They dangled an order for 36 brand new A380s, a deal worth about $16 billion at list prices. It wasn't just a purchase. It was a lifeline. Emirates was basically saying, keep this plane alive, we'll keep buying. Just give us the Neo we've been begging for. And for a few weeks, the aviation press went wild. Headlines screamed, could the A380neo finally take off? Analysts speculated about Rolls-Royce engines. Airbus engineers revisited design proposals. And fans of the superjumbo held their breath. Maybe, just maybe, the Queen of the Skies wasn't finished. But here's the brutal truth. Airbus had already made up its mind. From their perspective, Emirates was the only one left at the party. The A380's other customers had either stopped ordering or were quietly retiring their fleets. Air France was sending theirs to the scrapyard. Singapore Airlines, the A380's very first operator, was phasing out older units. Even Qatar Airways, Emirates' fierce regional rival, was openly complaining about the economics of the jet. Airbus knew that putting billions into a Neo would be like pouring champagne into a glass with a giant crack in it. So when Emirates made their pitch, Airbus smiled politely, nodded in public, and then whispered behind closed doors. Nope, the drama didn't stop there. Airbus executives actually walked away from one of the early announcements at the Dubai Airshow when Emirates refused to commit. For aviation fans, it was like watching a soap opera play out live. Emirates holding up the ring, Airbus crossing their arms, the crowd gasping. Eventually, Emirates caved. They still signed for a smaller top-up order of A380s in early 2018, just to keep the program limping along. But by 2019, the writing was on the wall. Emirates slashed its A380 order book, canceling dozens of jets, and pivoted toward Airbus' other offerings like the A350 and the smaller A330neo. plus Boeing's 787 Dreamliner. That was the moment the A380's fate was sealed. Airbus announced it would end production in 2021, delivering the very last aircraft to who else? Emirates. It was the aviation equivalent of a long, drawn-out breakup. Emirates had fought for the relationship, poured in money, begged for a second chance. Airbus, meanwhile, had already moved on to their hotter, younger projects, the A350 and the single-aisle A320neo family, which were selling like hotcakes. The A380 was yesterday's news, no matter how much Emirates tried to keep the romance alive. And for Sir Tim Clark, it was a bitter pill to swallow. He'd spent years championing the A380, making it central to Emirates' brand. To watch Airbus turn away felt like betrayal. But even he had to admit the economics didn't lie. You can't build an entire production line just for one customer, even if that customer is Emirates, and even if they're waving $16 billion in your face. So the breakup went public. Airbus admitted there was no future for the A380. Emirates admitted they had no choice but to diversify. And aviation fans around the world started preparing for the reality. The age of the superjumbo was ending, and the dream of the A380neo was officially dead. It was the end of an era. But was it the end of the story? Not quite. Because if there's one thing Emirates knows how to do, it's refuse to let go. So the breakup was official. Airbus pulled the plug. Emirates had to move on, and the A380neo dream was buried. End of story, right? Not quite. Because if there's one thing we know about Emirates, it's this. They don't let go of legends. Let's fast forward to today. Emirates operates a jaw-dropping 116 A380s, by far the biggest fleet in the world. In fact, more than half of all the A380s ever built are flying under their banner. While most other airlines have grounded or retired their superjumbos, Emirates is still doubling down, literally pouring money into keeping them alive. In 2022, when many thought the A380 would quietly fade away after COVID, Emirates shocked the industry by announcing a $2 billion cabin retrofit program. That's right, while others were putting theirs into storage, Emirates was sending their A380s back into the shop for makeovers. Out went the old interiors and came new premium economy seats, refreshed business class layouts, updated first class suites, and even reimagined economy sections. For passengers, it was like the A380 had suddenly gone from middle-aged to influencer chic. And why not? Emirates knows the A380 is still a magnet for travelers. Passengers go out of their way to book flights on it, whether for the sheer space, the quiet ride, or the bragging rights of taking a shower at 40,000 feet. The plane is still a marketing weapon. When you see that double-decker parked at the gate, it screams flagship. No A350, no Dreamliner, no 777 can match its visual impact. But let's be clear, keeping this beast alive is no easy task. Emirates has had to stockpile parts, work closely with suppliers, and even buy back some A380s that were coming off lease just to ensure they have enough airframes to keep their fleet strong into the 2030s. It's an expensive gamble, but one they're willing to make. Because for Emirates, the A380 isn't just a plane. It's their identity. And here's where Tim Clark, ever the romantic, still can't resist keeping the A380neo flame flickering. Even as recently as 2024, he's been quoted saying that if Rolls-Royce or another engine maker came up with a 25% more efficient engine, Emirates would be first in line for a reboot. He imagines a re-engined A380 powered by ultrafine technology, lighter materials, and modernized systems. In his mind, the Neo could still happen. That's a long shot, sure. But when has Emirates ever played it safe? Of course, Airbus has moved on. Their factories are slammed with A320neo orders, and their A350 is the long-haul darling of the decade. The cold reality is that the world just doesn't want super jumbos anymore. But the fact that Emirates keeps whispering about the Neo tells you everything you need to know about their relationship with the A380. It's not just nostalgia. It's strategy, pride, and vision all wrapped into one. So what's the cultural legacy of the A380? It's complicated. On one hand, it's the poster child for aviation excess. Too big, too costly, too late to the party. It never achieved the global sales Airbus dreamed of, and in the cold logic of business, it was a failure. But on the other hand, the A380 changed the way passengers thought about flying. It reminded people that flying could be glamorous again. It proved that airlines could use an aircraft as a marketing icon, and it cemented Emirates as a global powerhouse, turning Dubai into the layover capital of the planet. Ask any aviation geek and they'll tell you, the first time you board an A380, it feels different. The sheer size, the cathedral-like ceiling of the cabin, the quiet hum of those four engines. It's not just a flight, it's an experience. That's why passengers still go out of their way to book it. The A380 is aviation's rock star, even if it didn't sell like one. There's also a lesson here about timing. If the A380 had launched in the 1990s instead of the mid-2000s, before the rise of the Dreamliner and A350, maybe it would have found more love. If oil prices had stayed low, if twin-jet technology hadn't leapfrogged ahead, maybe the economics would have worked out. But aviation isn't about ifs. It's about cold numbers, and the A380 couldn't make them work except for Emirates. And maybe that's the final lesson. Sometimes one airline can change the destiny of an aircraft. Without Emirates, the A380 would have died even earlier. With Emirates, it lasted long enough to become iconic. The airline shaped its legacy, carried it further than anyone else dared, and is still flying it proudly today. So will we ever see an A380neo? Probably not. But the fact that we're still talking about it, still imagining it, still debating it shows just how powerful the idea was. The A3 was a dream that couldn't quite pay for itself, but it left a mark no twinjet ever will. And as long as Emirates keeps theirs in the sky, that dream lives on. So what do you think? Was the A380 a glorious mistake, or was it ahead of its time? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear them. And hey, if you enjoyed this journey through aviation's greatest what if, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more stories from the skies, and hit the bell so you never miss the next one. Until then, keep your seatbelt fastened, your tray table stowed, and your curiosity flying high.